The current recommendation for concussion management is a stepwise return to play or return to activity protocol if you're an athlete that involves gradually reintroducing physical and cognitive activities in a controlled manner while closely monitoring the patient's symptoms at each stage of the game to ensure that their symptoms do not return and or worsen. This approach is individualized to each person's specific needs and symptoms, and it has been shown to be more effective than rest alone in promoting recovery from a concussion. The goal of the protocol is to ensure that the individual can safely return to their sport or just daily life without putting themselves at risk for further injury. The first step in the return to play protocol is just rest for the first few days after the injury. But then this is followed by a gradual increase in physical and cognitive activity as symptoms improve. For example, an individual might start with light aerobic exercise, such as walking or stationary cycling, and then progress into more intense exercise as tolerated. Cognitive activities, such as reading or using a computer, can also be gradually reintroduced. The key to the stepwise return to play protocol is that it's individualized to each person's specific needs and symptoms. This means that the pace of progression will vary depending on the severity of the injury and the individual's response to each activity. Closely monitoring the patient's symptoms is essential throughout this process, and any increase in symptoms should prompt a decrease in activity. Also important to emphasize, this is simply a step within this protocol. Rest, I'm referring to. Rest is not the entire protocol. And we talked all about that in this video and why simply resting after sustaining concussion is outdated advice and in fact may promote more harm than good. Once you've been cleared by a medical professional to begin the return to play protocol, the next step is light aerobic exercise. This might include walking or cycling at a low intensity. Symptoms should be closely monitoring during this phase, and you should stop exercising if your symptoms return and or worsen. Something that is often used at this stage of the game is something called the Buffalo Concussion Treadmill Test or bike test. Whether you do the bike test or the treadmill doesn't really matter as much. They both serve the same general purpose. And if you click on this video, I'll walk you through exactly how and why one would use one of these tests. The next step is sport-specific exercise. This includes drills and exercises that are specific to the athlete's sport, but at a low intensity. The athlete should continue to be monitored closely for any return and or worsening of symptoms, and the same thing applies to non-athletes. Now is time to re-engage with the activities that make up your daily routine. From a provider standpoint, this can be difficult when dealing with athletes because athletes, especially if they're one of the stars on the team, may not always be 100% transparent with you in regards to their symptoms. They want to be back out on the field, and their team needs them back out on that field. So honestly, for me personally, I don't often get the privilege of working with patients who have recently sustained a concussion. I more so see folks who have been struggling for a while. But if you have recently sustained a head injury, something that I personally do with all patients that make their way into my office is before we even start this whole protocol, I educate them on the realities of a concussion and how important it is to take this seriously. You should understand the pathophysiology of a traumatic brain injury and the realities of sustaining another one within a short period of time. We will walk through all of that and how this will then progress so that you understand the steps and the boxes that we have to check off in order to get you back out on the field in the safest manner possible. The final step is a return to full contact or gameplay. This should only be done once the athlete has been symptom-free for at least 24 hours and cleared by a medical professional. The athlete should continue to be monitored during this phase to ensure that they are not experiencing any symptoms. And I think it's worth repeating that the return to play protocol should be individualized to each person's needs and symptoms. The pace of progressing through the protocol will depend entirely on the severity of the concussion and the individual's response to each step within the protocol. Symptoms should always be closely monitored, and any return and or worsening of symptoms should be taken very seriously. You only get one brain, folks, at least as of right now. In conclusion, the return to play protocol is an important aspect of concussion management and is designed to ensure that athletes or non-athletes can return to their sport or daily activities without risking further injury or exacerbation of their symptoms.